And welcome to another episode of The Simpsons Did It. I'm your host, Steven Sklansky.
And I'm your co-host, Robert Sklansky.
Sit.
I'm not a dog?
Stay.
Well, I can do that. We're recording.
Perfect. Speak.
Rough.
Okay, perfect. You're not as bad as Santa's Little Helper.
Now, last week's episode was quite fun.
I know, right? We had a very special Simpsons guest.
Yeah, he was a pretty cool guy.
He calls himself the Simpsons man, as you heard, and he's definitely a Simpsons man.
So, as Steve was alluding to, trying to get me to sit, stay, and speak, this week's episode 16 of season 2, Bart's dog gets an F.
Man, it's another one of those Bart-centric episodes again.
Yeah, Bart got an F, and now his dog's getting an F.
Something's wrong with Bart.
I mean, well, we'll get into that. So the air date of this episode was March 7th, 1991. So we're getting into spring. I mean, we're getting close to the end of the season. We're on episode 16. We got, I believe, 6 episodes left. If I've done my math right, I think there's 20. I think there's 22,
23 or 22.
So we got 6 or 7 left.
I thought it was 6 or 7.
So to recap, Bart's dog is sent to obedience school after he destroys Homer's expensive new sneaks. Oh boy. Yes. Yikes. Chalkboard gag. I will not sell school property. And so when I saw this, I was like, this seems really familiar. And so I looked back through our notes. Yeah, this was a repeat from when Bart got hit by a car episode.
Yep, they're getting lazier.
They are. And speaking of repeats, The Simpsons, including Santa's Little Helper and Snowball 2, all sit on the couch. Another repeat. I don't remember which episode that was, but come on, Simpsons, get your game together. I know it's season 2,
okay.
But
so we've talked about this so far in season 2 with all the Bart episodes, like Bart gets an F, Bart's dog gets an F, Bart the Daredevil,
Bart gets hit by a car.
Bart gets hit by a car. It's like the lazy titles of the episodes have started kind of filtering into their couch gags and chalkboard gags.
Now, to be fair, when they started season 2, they wanted to center it more on Bart because Bart was really popular in the early 90s.
Yes, as we've alluded to quite a bit, actually.
So I get the Bart-centric episodes, but you could throw us a new chalkboard or a new couch gag. You don't have to repeat them.
Yeah, how hard is it to write a chalkboard gag? Come on.
Well, I mean, there's over 300. There's almost 700 episodes. I mean, how hard could it be? So we open this episode with the newspaper boy throwing newspaper at Holmes and throws one to the Simpsons. Homer gets outside to grab it, and so does Santa's Little Helper, and they have a little tug of war over the paper, and it rips in half, kind of.
Well, see, that's what you're alluding to. Like the way that it's pictured is Santa's Little Helper is with Homer, or Santa's Little Helper is at the bottom, Homer's at the top. They're tugging back and forth. He rips it. Obviously, Homer's like, ugh. Yeah. But then when he sits down at the kitchen tables and opens it, the hole is in the middle of the paper.
Yeah, that's an animation error. That's gotta be.
Well, yeah. I mean,
we grew up reading newspapers. Like,
I think we know where a paper rips and where it would happen. But before we get to the kitchen table with the dog, I wanted to point out that if our dog were to run outside,
he would have been gone.
He would have been gone. And
Charlie ran away, and so did Cooper.
So through the episode, obviously, we're going to talk about how bad Santa's Little Helper is, but at least he didn't run away.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. They're sitting there for breakfast, and Santa's Little Helper is looking at Homer's food, and Homer's like, no, that's my food. But from the perspective of Santa's Little Helper, we see, gray. And by the way, dogs do not see gray. They see in like a couple colors, but it's not just gray.
But we didn't learn that. I guess I didn't do the research on that, but it wasn't until I think like mid 2000s where doctors actually determined that.
That's true.
In the 90s, it was still in gray.
But it really wasn't.
But it really wasn't, but that's what we thought back in the 90s.
And all the dog hears from Homer is like blah, blah, blah nonsense and just stares at the food.
Which sounds like most dogs staring at you.
Yeah.
And I like how it's, and then Homer, I guess the next shot is Lisa in her bed sleeping,
Yep.
and we find out that she has the mumps, and I like how Marge diagnosed that like right away. It's like Marge had the mumps at some point,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
but then it goes back down to Homer, and Homer yells up at Marge that the dog is hungry.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, feed him. And then in the background, you see the dog jumping up on the table eating Homer's breakfast, and Marge is like, well, feed him.
He fed himself. Now, we grew up with dogs. I mean, we grew up with one at a time, but especially with Cooper, because he was so much taller, you couldn't leave your plate at the edge of the table.
Oh, actually, my dog right now, Bob, dude,
Yeah.
you can't leave anything on the table. He will literally jump up on table. He'll jump up on our island now, and our table is
Oh,
about a foot shorter than our island, and he'll get
yeah.
up on the island now.
So it's not unusual is not the word I'm looking for, but it's not improbable that Santa's little helper could jump up on the Simpsons dining room table and eat the food. Now, whether the table would stand on all four legs while he did it, that's another story. So next scene, we get Santa's little helper in the backyard tied up on a chain, and you could tell he's walked that path because it's just dirt. Like they put him out there.
The weird thing about it was, that's the weird thing. Yes, so it seems like the radius was stretched as far as
he could go.
The Santa's little helper's chain could go. So that doesn't mean that it was scraping on the ground. I don't know how you get. I could see if it was like a path in a circle around the radius of the extension of the.
But also he
chain.
he also dug up the ground too, because we see him dig out a Krusty the Clown doll. Later, a little bit later, we see him trying to bury a potted plant. So I mean, I'm sure he dug up a lot of that too.
Yeah, but it was more flat. The ground seemed to be more flat than it was.
I mean, dogs pat down the dirt, don't they, when they bury things?
I guess so, but that seems really flat. So one thing we did miss when Marge actually tries to wake Lisa up is, despite being sick, Lisa did not want to go to school.
No, she did,
or she did want to go to school. It was just so, like, I know we waking up when we were sick, we were like, yeah, great, free day. We're not going to go.
I mean, to be fair, even when we weren't sick, we didn't want to go to school. So
exactly, something's wrong with Lisa. I mean, Bart even knows something's wrong with Lisa.
Yeah. So now, Marge calls Dr. Hibbert because she's panicked about Lisa. And Dr. Hibbert's like, how did you get this number? So how did Marge get Dr. Hibbert's home phone number?
My guess would be, is she called the office.
Yeah.
And he's not at the office. And yet, obviously, because it seemed like they were eating dinner as a family, but my guess is it would have been breakfast.
Yeah, because it was morning.
Exactly. And then they talk to the receptionist. Receptionist's like, oh, he's not in, or maybe not in today even. Yeah. She's like, well, Lisa's dying. She's on her last legs. I got to talk to Dr. Hibbert. And that's how the phone number. And that's why I think he's like, oh, that was a good one.
Yeah. So, and also Dr. Hibbert's home and family resemble that of the Cosby Show, which at this time, the Simpsons were battling for ratings on Thursday nights. So,
which I think is kind of funny, because they're like, you know what? Let's make the Hibbert family. Let's go all in on this whole Cosby thing to maybe pull in some of those viewers. Be like, hey, if we're looking like the Cosby Show, maybe more viewers will come.
Yeah. They do a lot of things over the years to, reference other television shows. So obviously this was just the beginning of it.
Oh, yeah. We get to the next scene and Bart walks in and he's like, no way, she's faking it. If Lisa stays home, I stay home. And then Lisa's like, if Bart stays home, I'm going to school. It's like Lisa just doesn't want to be around Bart. And then Bart's like, fine, then wait a minute. If Lisa goes to school, then I go to school. But then if Lisa stays home, so I stay home. So Lisa goes to school.
And Marge is like,
Lisa, don't confuse your brother like that.
I feel like it's not that confusing, but as we know, Bart has the male Simpson gene of stupidity. So, well, we don't know that yet, but clearly Bart is Homer's kid. And so Marge hands him Bart's lunchbox and they're like, all right, go to school. And before before that, Bart tells Lisa not to waste the mumps like she did with chicken pox, which I thought was funny because I don't think I had chicken pox. I believe you had chicken pox, and you stayed home for like 3 days, if I remember. I mean,
Well,
I
you
was
have
really
to.
young.
It's contagious. Like,
Yeah.
so that's the funny thing about the statement is, at least I know growing up in the 90s, people stayed home and they had the chicken pox because it is contagious.
Yep.
One thing we learned from South Park later on is they had chicken pox
Pox
parties
party.
with the kids, so they would all get chicken pox. And obviously, we learned that you don't do that because some kids have,
Shingles.
they get affected different ways than other
And
kids
also,
do.
if you get the chicken pox later on in life, you can develop shingles. So,
Yes.
I mean, probably not a good idea to get your kids sick.
No, but it is kind of crazy that Lisa actually went to school then with the chicken
Now
pox.
we don't know if she went to school. I'm assuming she did, but it also, I mean, as we learn later, Bart actually does bring Lisa's homework back. So maybe she didn't go to school, but she still did her schoolwork.
That's possible because yeah, none of us wanted to do schoolwork if we were sick. We stayed home and
Yeah.
played video games, watched TV.
Yeah.
And so Bart walking to the school bus, we see him walk past Santa's little helper, and Santa's little helper's like, "Well, I'm gonna go."
Yep.
And so he breaks his never break collar.
It's only 89 cents.
I could see why it never breaks, but it obviously did that time.
Yeah. So, you know.
And so Bart boards the bus, and he's like, Santa's little helper wants to get on the bus too, and Otto's like, "Hey, your furry little friend can't come with."
And Bart tells him to go home, and once again, Santa's little helper doesn't understand the command to go home.
Yeah, blah 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 blah.
Clearly,
blah, blah, blah.
the Simpsons never tried to train this dog.
No, which the funny thing is, I get he was a horrible race dog, but I feel like if you're breeding and racing dogs, you kind of have to train them to do something. So it seems like
but don't forget, he was very bad at racing.
He always came in last. Doesn't mean he was okay. Yeah, he was bad at running fast, I guess would be the way to put it. But he still ran around in a circle, chased the rabbit, what have you. But I feel like you still have to be trained to chase the rabbit.
Maybe he wasn't trained really well, and then he just forgot all of his training.
I guess that's possible, but at least so Shay really wants to get a greyhound, okay. And the greyhounds you adopt from racing usually is like 2.5, 3 years old. That's when they basically retire greyhounds.
Sure.
So I feel like at 2 to 3 years old, you should know, sit, stay, those commands. But yeah. Santa's little helper apparently just never learned.
And so before you said Santa's little helper never runs away, well, you know, he broke off his collar and he did kind of run away.
Yeah, he wandered through Springfield. He went to a Pooh's, or the Quickie Mart.
And he got some beef jerky.
Well, yes. I mean, if you're going to get anything from the Quickie Mart, at least the beef jerky might be safe.
Yep. And then he ends up in a neighbor's pool, Sylvia Winfield, who I'm pretty sure we never see again.
You know, I was looking at her, and there might be one or two other scenes. It's kind of funny with The Simpsons, as we'll discuss later on once they get to the obedience school. Is like we see Jacques again. I mean, we do see secondary or even Z characters.
Yeah.
Even if it's in the background, like even if it's just, you know, they're not speaking, they don't have any talking roles, but we see a lot of characters in the background.
Yeah.
And so my guess is I think I recognize her. I think she shows up again, but not necessarily as a speaking character.
And so Sylvia Winfield is voiced by Tracy Ullman of the Ullman Show fame, of where The Simpsons, you know, originated from.
Well, they had to bring her back for something, right? I mean,
and they brought her back for two things in this episode. We'll get to the second.
I know, but so I like the fact. I feel like so then she lives on the Simpsons the same block.
I'm assuming
she's
or
like,
in
I don't
the same
know,
neighborhood.
She's like, I don't know anyone in our neighborhood with such a horrible dog. I like how the Santa's little helper's just swimming around in the pool.
He's not doing anything wrong. He's going for a swim.
Dogs like to swim.
Yeah. I mean, that was the great thing about Charlie, though, is when he ran away, there was a pond in our neighborhood he would always run to, so you knew where he was.
Exactly. I think that's the best part. We always knew where he ran away to. We didn't have to go hunting for him.
Yeah.
But I do like how Sylvia calls the, I guess you would call the animal control, the dog warden.
Or dog catcher, but she calls him the dog warden. And Homer is like, go ahead, call the dog warden. I don't know how many times I have to tell you, our dog is chained up in the backyard. I did it myself. I'm looking at him right. Oh,
yep. And he's gone. So then he heads out to the front to, I'm assuming try to track down Santa's little helper. And he goes to Sylvia's place, grabs him.
yeah.
And then as he's walking back, he runs into Ned, or in this case, Mr. Universe.
He's in his tracksuit. He's jogging. He's got ankle weights. He's got a heart monitor. I think, isn't he carrying around little weights in his hand too?
Yeah, weights. Yep.
Yeah. Like he's just all, I mean, you know what? Got to keep in good health though.
And so he's wearing the new Assassins, and Flanders is like, they got Velcro straps, a water pump in the tongue, built-in pedometer, reflective sidewalls, and little vanity license plates, which say Ned.
Yep. And the Assassins were a reference to the Nike Air Jordans.
Which is funny because maybe the look of them were, because I feel like the look of them were for Jordans, but if they have like the pump in the tongue, like it says, that's the Reebok, the Reebok pumps from the 90s. So I looked it up. And so Ned was talking about the built-in pedometer and heart rate monitor and stuff like that. And I got to thinking, I'm like, okay, so that sounds like a future product. Like what shoes had, now they do, like Nike makes them, Adidas, a lot of these companies just built-in stuff right into their shoes. So I looked it up. So I would think this would be a future predicting moment, but it's not. The Adidas Micro Pacer is a legendary sneaker. First developed in the early 1980s, the silhouette gained its fame due to the computer built into the tongue, which used to track speed, steps, distance, and the onboard pedometer was unlike anything running community had ever seen before. So it is amazing that something that anyone probably watching this episode that doesn't know much about shoes, I guess, would be like, oh, that's something that we're going to see in the future. How cool is that?
Nope.
But it existed in the 80s. And I actually looked up the photo of the photo. I feel like they'd be uncomfortable. The tongue, kind of like what I read is like the computer built into the tongue. It was a lot beefier. Like it was pretty thick. I mean, I'm guessing they padded the inside, but there was like this little computer module on the front with buttons and everything.
Yeah, I got to imagine that sneaker would have been very uncomfortable to wear.
Yeah, but hey, someone was thinking in the future for this shoe in the 80s. So unfortunately, not a future prediction, folks, but a past prediction. Still cool that it was in existence.
Yeah. So the next scene, Marge takes Lisa to Dr. Hibbert's office, and Dr. Hibbert confirms that Lisa has the mumps. He tells her she's got to miss a week of school, and we find out here that Lisa's favorite subject in school is arithmetic. She likes the math, which you know what, I love math, dude.
I mean, I would take math as my favorite subject.
Math or science?
Well, I guess to be fair, in high school, my favorite subject was gym because I got to go bowling.
That's not a subject. You don't learn anything.
I learned how to not be in a classroom and go bowling.
I mean, I did bowling I think I did it for 2 semesters, not back to back, but that was the awesome thing about high school is we got to go bowling. Granted, we had to pay for it, but still.
Yeah. I mean, technically our parents paid for it.
Correct.
Let's leave it at that. All right. So I like how, next shot is Homer at his office with his feet up and he has his names written on his shoes. Like, he's like, you know what? I might not have the best shoes like Ned Flanders, but I'm damn well going to have my name on it.
So Lisa calls him and tells him she has the mumps and asks him to pick up some sneakers, or not sneakers, magazines. And it was Teen Dream, Team Scream, and Team Steam magazines.
Which I don't know if you'd want your 8-year-old daughter reading.
No.
I mean, I feel like growing up, these were kind of like Teen Vogue or Teen Cosmo.
Yeah.
Or, you know what I mean? Like they're magazines along those lines. But then we had like, what was it? Tiger Beat. And I can't remember any of the other words. Unfortunately, I wasn't an 8-year-old girl, so I didn't.
The only magazines I ever remember reading were the Boy Scout ones, which were kind of fun.
Yes, but those were meant for boys.
Yeah. I did skip
Not
over
girls.
something else. So when Lisa tells Homer that she has the mumps, he says, "Oh, the kissing disease. My little girl's growing up." And here's the thing. That is mono, not mumps. Mono is the kissing disease. Lisa has the mumps.
Yep, so Homer unfortunately failed on that one.
And Lisa, here's the thing, Lisa doesn't correct him. Maybe that was for time, or Lisa didn't know that the mumps wasn't called the kissing disease.
Well, probably not. I mean, I don't know. I guess I don't know necessarily when I learned that, but I feel like I was more high school.
I think late middle school, early high school.
Yeah, so definitely not 8th grade. So she probably was like, all right, but silly dad.
Yeah. So I love how like Homer's like, all right, I gotta run out. Lenny, cover for me. And he just sits. But here's the thing, Lenny isn't a supervisor, is he?
No. Well, Homer's not well,
he is. He's the safety supervisor.
Well, he's the safety inspector. I don't think he was ever promoted to supervisor.
Oh, maybe not. But
does that mean Lenny is like a safety inspector too? Is that his job?
I didn't think it was. I mean, to be fair, Homer doesn't know really how to do his job. So, I mean, Lenny could probably do his job if Homer doesn't know how to do it.
Yep. I feel like Lenny could do just enough job. I mean, he just sat there and put his feet up just like Homer does.
Yeah. And eats donuts.
Yep, and eats donuts. So now we head back to the Simpson home where Lisa's sick, and we learn about the Bouvier family patchwork quilt.
Mm-hmm. And I had to look this up. The second frame of the quilt depicts a poster from one of Buffalo Bill's Wild West shows. In addition, the photograph of the Falling Soldier by Robert Capa is in the third frame of the quilt. And I kind of looked this one up. The fourth one is a graph with the year 1929 on it. And I'm pretty sure that depicts the stock market crash in 1929, also known as Black Tuesday.
Yeah, so a World War I doughboy getting... Oh, that was the other one. So a stock market graph with the arrow pointing down and the caption reading 1929. Yeah, that's for the stock market crash.
That's what I thought. I saw like the other two I didn't really know, but that last one I'm like, that probably has to do with the stock market crashing.
Yep, and then Marge's addition to the quilt was the "Keep on Truckin'" with yin yang with a yin yang sign.
I didn't know what it meant then, and I still don't know what it means now.
All I know is it's a Grateful Dead thing.
Is it?
Yeah.
No, I did not know that.
Yeah, it's a Grateful Dead thing.
Okay.
Which, so Marge grew up, would have been in the 60s.
Yeah.
So it makes sense
for
her to do it. I don't know if she doesn't even know what it means. So she probably heard it from some deadhead and was like, all right, I like it. It's a good saying. Keep on trucking. Keep your life moving, maybe.
I do. It's crazy how good Marge is at threading a needle.
Well, she just throws it up in the air and it just lands right on the string, and then she ties it off somehow. And
like I did what is it? Is it home ec? Yep. I did home ec in 7th grade, I want to say, because I did some of the we sewed pillows and whatnot, and I sucked at threading needles. I mean, I eventually got it, but those holes are tiny.
Yep, you just gotta have a good eye.
I wear glasses.
Yep. And so Homer goes to the mall, and the first thing he gets is the magazines.
Yeah.
And so when Homer's at the newsstand, you see Teen Dream, Teen Scheme, Teen Scream, Teen Steam, Teen Beam, and Non-Threatening Boys magazine.
See, I did not take the time to pause it and look at all the magazines because I'm like, there's too many.
Yep. So those are all the magazines at apparently this newsstand at the mall. And so I'm guessing Non-Threatening Boys magazine is kind of in reference to what you said, like the Boy Scouts magazine.
It's possible.
I would call Boy Scouts non-threatening.
You're probably right.
So, but I do like how it's a bunch of girly magazines and then a boys magazine.
Yeah.
And so Homer's like, okay, fine. I like how the guy laughs at him. He's like, these are for my daughter. Sure.
Sure.
And so he's walking through the mall and runs into the cookie lady. And he's like, ooh, macadamia nut.
Oh, yeah. That's right. And I love how, like, she's like, oh, you could buy a cookie inside. It's like, oh, see, that's how they get you. They give you free samples, and then they want to buy something. You know what? You're right. I'm going to go buy a cookie.
Yeah. I mean, to me, free samples, I can usually hold myself off at free samples, especially if I know I can keep coming back to get free samples.
Oh, for sure.
Like, why would I go in and buy a cookie if I could just get a free sample? Although, to be fair, it was a big cookie.
It was. So when we were little and we'd go grocery shopping with her mom, we always went to Sam's Club, and they always had the free samples. And it was usually around, I don't know, it was usually around like brunch time, and I would be hungry. So I'm like, ooh, free samples. I'd only take one because I always thought I see when I was a kid, I always thought, I would get in trouble if I took more than one. But now as an adult, I know they're not going to do anything. So I take as much as I can.
Exactly. It's a good place to get a free lunch.
It is. Especially
on a Sunday.
Especially
before lunch.
Yeah. Don't eat before meals, kids. So
I mean, you are paying for a membership for Sam's Club. So I feel like the free samples are included in your membership.
Yeah. So after buying the big cookie, he runs into a shoe store and he sees the assassins, and the tagline for assassins is join the conspiracy. And the assassins are worth $125, which I'm surprised they're not worth more.
Well, especially with what's in it.
Yeah.
I think
like
so,
that's cheap.
I think I'm thinking back to those Adidas. Granted, it was mid 80s. I mean, I guess the price difference between 80s and 90s wasn't probably too horrible.
No.
But those Adidas were going for $180.
Really?
Yeah.
That's cheap. What was it? I mean, even for the 80s, I guess if you account for inflation, like those shoes today would probably be like $300.
Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like because what was in, it was called a computer, but it was in probably essence like a step counter.
Yeah.
And built into the tongue of the shoe. But I mean, 180, that's pretty good. So, I mean, you go to the 90s now and these are 125. It seems kind of light. I feel like they probably could have been more towards the 200 range.
Yeah.
But, I mean, hey, Homer was like, you know what? I want them. And then I like how Flanders invades his thoughts, like, and then tells him to buy the shoes because he's the boss.
Yeah, Ned Flanders in a thought bubble. He's the boss. Yep.
Which is fun. I do like the fact that Homer hates Ned Flanders so much, but he thinks of him as the boss of him.
Yeah. Yeah. It's weird. That is kind of weird. So after that, and before he goes in, he does drop the magazines, and we'll get to that in a second. So the next scene, Lisa and Marge are in Lisa's room, and Bart comes in with Lisa's homework, and Lisa goes, oh, you brought me this, this, and this. Remedial reading? Bart, do your own homework. Honestly, if we ever had the only time we attended the same school together was elementary school. And I don't think I ever got your homework for you. I think mom or dad would have come and gotten it.
And that's if I think, I mean, obviously it's a long time ago for me, and I don't know if I can hardly remember, but I think maybe 1 or 2 times I was sick, I ever got homework sent home. But other than that, it was all just makeup work when I got back.
So I never had the chance to give you your homework. Had I had that chance, I probably would have tried to sneak in my own homework with it.
And I would have been like, I've already done this homework before. Is this a repeat? Are they repeating my homework?
From the first grade?
From the first grade? What? So Homer walks in and he's like, hey, Lisa, here's your magazines. And he's like, how many of these guys are named Corey?
I saw that. I saw the name Corey written in the notes. I'm like, what is that alluding to? Did somebody not type out a full sentence or? So that makes sense.
I sometimes do that to remind myself to talk about it.
Yeah. We did see Homer drop the magazines, and he was thoughtful enough to remember to pick them back up.
Yep. And I like how Lisa's like, 8. Thanks, Dad. And so we'll get to this even in, I think, much later episode, but there is a complete episode where Lisa gets addicted to calling the Corey hotline.
Oh, that's right. Wasn't that when she babysat?
Yep.
Yeah.
And so Bart comes in, he's like, "Oh my god, assassins!" And then Homer's like, "Yeah." It's like, "Well, they better be for 125 big ones."
Yeah, Marge did not know, and she's like, "Well, we're supposed to talk to each other about big purchases," and I forget what Homer had said to like kind of say, "Oh yeah, this is the reason I bought them because you bought all this stuff."
Yep, and I'll tell you guys, for anyone who's married or thinking about getting married, I am addicted to buying Funko Pop vinyls. And my wife uses that against me anytime she wants to buy a pair of shoes, a brand new dress, or anything that costs money, because she'll be like, "Well, you get to go out and buy you don't consult me when you go out and buy all your Funko Pops."
She's right. See, that's
she is right.
See, that's the great thing about being single, because you're the one that got me addicted to Funko Pops, and I'm currently surrounded by about 20 unopened boxes of them. And so, but that's great. I'm single. I don't have to take accountability to anybody for spending my money because, I know what I can spend. Where you're married with a kid, you should probably be consulting your wife about what you're buying.
Exactly. So for all you listeners out there that are married or are thinking about getting married or having a girlfriend, just keep this in mind. Do not be a Homer. Don't bring that up. Don't bring up what your significant other is purchasing as a way to justify your purchases.
Yeah.
Don't do it. It's not a good idea.
No. So switching gears, we go to the next scene, and the TV is on, and we see Kent Brockman covering the Babysitter Bandit from season 1. And then it switches channels, and then it switches channels again, and we see.
You forgot what Kent Brockman was talking about. He was talking about the breakout of the Babysitter Bandit.
Was that what it was?
Jail.
Oh, I missed that. It
was.
Okay. Yes. So then we get to Troy McClure and his TV show, and if you notice the voice was different, that's because it was. It was not voiced by Phil Hartman. It was voiced by Dan Castellaneta.
Oh, interesting.
So they did not get Phil Hartman back to reprise Troy McClure for this, albeit, like 5-second scene, 10-second scene, but so, and the TV keeps changing channels, and we find out that Santa's little helper is lying on the couch chewing on the remote.
Which we've never had a dog that's done that.
No.
Thank God.
No, Charlie ate Kleenex, he ate books, he ate other food, but he never ate the remote.
I've been to a house on a job before where I had to replace a remote because the dog ate the remote. So this is real. Don't worry.
I'm surprised in this episode we didn't get Santa's little helper eating Lisa's homework.
Well, that's more Bart's homework because he never does it.
Yeah.
And so Santa's little helper gets off the couch and is looking around, and he spots Homer's brand new assassins, and the shoelace drops maybe from wind. Who knows?
So I hate this scene. I hate this scene because, as you just said, the shoelace drops. Why? There's nothing there to move the shoelace. It's been sitting up there for how knows how long. You could have just put the shoes.
Wind.
You could have just put the shoes on the ground. Like I feel like Homer would have just left them on the ground and not put them high up on the shelf. Because I highly doubt he would have thought Santa's little helper would have eaten the shoes. So
who does that? Anyone out there put their shoes high up on a shelf, or do you put them on? I mean, most people, yes, might have like a shoe rack in their front entrance or a closet in their front entrance so that they put it. But yes, I don't think most people put their shoes high up unless Homer was like, you know what? This dog has been eating things. I'm going to put my shoes where he can't get them.
But the problem is we don't see that play out.
Yeah.
So to have the shoes on the top shelf of the closet, fine. But then to have the shoelaces drop so that the dog could eat the shoes to continue further the story. Come on. That's awful writing. Just have the shoes on the ground, have Santa's little helper see them, And then voila, it makes more sense. I hate this scene. Let's move on. I
All
hate this
right.
scene.
And so after the shoes are eaten, they're like, okay, we got to get help for this dog. This dog's completely off his rocker. And so Marge opens up the phone book, and I like how in most animated shows, and they show phone books, they show like people looking for certain things, and everything is usually like blurred out. Like it's
Oh
not.
yeah, this one there's like numbers for everything.
Yes, and so it's kind of funny, but the ones they're looking at are big ass, like are maybe not advertisements, but big. I'm sure they paid for the space within the phone book to have
Oh
their
yeah.
business. But you got a few of them. You got East Side Rough Form School, which is obviously for those dogs from the other side of the tracks.
Yep.
You got Professor Von Bowser's Sanitarium for Dogs.
We taught a dog to drive.
Which, I mean, these are for the crazy dogs.
Yep.
You got Dr. Marvin Monroe's Canine Therapy Institute.
Your dog isn't the problem. You are.
Yes, because Marvin Monroe likes to blame other people for their problems.
Yep.
And then Emily Winthrop's Canine College.
Yep. And so Marge is like, oh, this looks great. Let's enroll him into this one.
I mean, I feel like Santa's Little Helper might have been more the sanitarium for dogs.
Probably. Or maybe even, no, I was going to say Eastside Reform School, but.
No. He's outside of that. He's not a mean dog. I wouldn't call him a mean dog. But the other thing is, the Dr. Marvin Monroe's one, I guess that would have led another cameo for Marvin Monroe if they decided to go that route. But I like how the slogan with the dog isn't the problem, you are. To be fair, if the owners are not training the dog,
it
is definitely the human's problem.
So the one thing that bugs me about society is how people like, oh, pit bulls are bad dogs. They're mean. And you know what? If a dog is mean, it's because the owner treats them badly.
Yes.
So Dr. Marvin Monroe's Canine Institute would be more for, bad owners. He's going to be like, you're a bad owner. And maybe Dr. Marvin Monroe would just take the dog away if the owner isn't treating the dog correctly. So yeah, for anybody out there who thinks dogs are bad because of their breed, they're not. It's the owner's fault. Yes. Except for Chihuahuas. Chihuahuas are a whole different category of dog.
Yep. So we get to Emily Winthrop, which is a parody of Margaret Thatcher in her mannerisms. And she is based off of British dog trainer and author Barbara Woodhouse.
And she is
also voiced by
Tracy Ullman. Yeah. So, she is the creator well, she's not the creator of The Simpsons, but she's the one that had the shorts on her show. So you gotta throw her a bone, man. And she does a wonderful job. Job.
I mean, it is funny how her accents are pretty good. Obviously, with this one, she's doing a British accent. The other one, she's got an American accent. So she's actually pretty good voice actor. So we get a look at the room of all the dogs. We see Jacques, the bowling instructor. He has a French poodle. We see Martin is the proud owner of a Shar-Pei, which I mean, that's kind of a Martin dog I would go with.
Yeah.
And then they start with Satan's Little Helper. I mean Santa's Little Helper. Sorry.
So did she read that wrong, or did Bart write Satan?
I'm guessing he had to have written Satan because he can't spell.
Yeah, maybe. It's possible.
Just remember, though, Satan is an anagram for Santa.
It is.
So take that as a grain of salt.
So then we get into the training, and she's like, remember these two words, choke chain. And I get Bart's not wanting to use the choke chain on Santa's Little Helper. We had a choke chain when we had Charlie. I don't know if that helped. We also had the shock collar too for a little bit. I'm not sure if those things really helped. He was a good dog. He listened to commands. We were able to train him, but I don't know what the effect that the choke chain or the shock collar really had on him.
Well, I mean, the shock collar for barking is pretty effective because if you bark and you get shocked, you won't want to do it again. And obviously it takes it is a training thing too. So if you choke the dog because they're not doing what you want it to do, you give it a treat, and then eventually you can remove the choke chain because they know this sensation. They're like, oh, if I don't do this, they know. But for Charlie and Cooper, the choke chain was actually more meant for them pulling on walks, because if they're choking themselves while on a walk, they're not going to want to do it again.
Yeah, I always felt bad though putting the choke chain on Charlie. Obviously, I wasn't old enough with Cooper because he passed away when I was in the first grade, so I was like 6. So he was already there for I only was really mentally capable of understanding the dog for like a couple years, so I didn't have that emotional attachment. I was still sad when we had to put him down, but with Charlie, I always felt bad putting the choke chain on him. So I understand Bart not wanting to use the choke chain.
Yeah, Bart throughout so far between season 1 and 2, his empathy rating has been like up and down. Like this episode, a lot of empathy. Bart versus Thanksgiving, 0 empathy until the very end. It seems like Bart's mental capacity for certain things seems to fluctuate depending on the storyline. That's what it seems like.
And I feel like that stems from, as spoiler alert, we learn in like season 12, the Adderall episode, when he has to take the Ritalin or whatever. He has ADHD. Yeah. So I don't know if anybody out there who's diagnosed with ADHD or ADD can talk to how you feel towards others or show empathy. If that affects how you show empathy, I'd love to know. Because I kind of wonder if, we know, as we learn way down the road, he has ADHD. That might contribute to it. Or he's just a little sociopath.
Yeah, that too.
Although sociopaths do not show empathy. They know how to fake it, but they don't know actually how to feel it.
Yeah. Hey, do you like Cards Against Humanity?
I sure do.
Well, what if you could play Cards Against Humanity Simpsons style?
That would be amazing.
Well, now you can. Check out cardsagainstthesimpsons.com to buy your very own set of Simpsons Against Humanity.
I see a lot of podcasts give out discount codes. Is there a promo code I could use?
There sure is. Use promo code SimpsonsPod. That's SIMPSONSPOD to receive a 10% discount on Cards Against Humanity, the Simpsons way.
Ay caramba, that's a good deal. But for all of our listeners out there, if you want a better deal, you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook to get a different promo code to save even more.
That is correct. So head over to Facebook, the Simpsons Did It page, Instagram, Simpsons Did It Pod, and Twitter, Simpsons Did It PC to get that code. And as always, everything's coming up Millhouse. So we cut to Lisa and Marge watching soap operas while they're sewing their quilt. And I'm like, okay. I mean, I've watched a few soap operas here and there, and our mom used to watch them way back in the day. I doubt she does anymore. She doesn't spend much time inside the house.
I think she's still... No, she might not watch them anymore. I think
growing up, she used to watch them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she did.
But it's really funny the type of stuff within soap operas that
you're my Lisa evil twin. No, I'm not. You're dead. What?
Yeah. I mean, it is kind of funny, like what Lisa's watching, and then Marge is like, I don't normally watch them all the time, except I watch this one because blah 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 blah. I'm like, that's exactly why you watch them.
Yeah.
Every episode is like that. There's always weird twists in soap operas that you're watching all the time.
Wasn't this the one where the two characters in the soap opera were going to start making love? And that's when Lisa's like, oh, this is steamy. Like, why is Marge letting Lisa watch this stuff?
I don't know. But maybe she's like, okay, this is what life is really like when you grow up.
Yeah.
Probably not. I don't know. So then we flash back to the canine college, and we see all the dogs are better than Bart's. Well, like they show him rolling over, they show him sitting.
Is this the part?
I like how everyone's.
I was gonna say, is this the part with the steak?
No, not yet.
Okay, I'm ahead of myself.
This is just yes. This is more of just a montage of like the dog's rolling down the stairs all nicely and sitting, and Martin's dog is balancing like books on his head, and while Bart's trying to get his dog still to sit. And then after that montage, we cut to Homer trying to return the shoes to the store.
Who's gonna take those shoes back? I love the fact that Homer is like, oh, my dog was bringing me my shoes, and then they just fell apart. I don't know what happened.
Yep. So at the Springfield Mall, the shoe store carries footwear grouped by sport. There's bocce ball, kickboxing, street crime, and nightlife.
By the way, we got super ahead of ourselves with the cookie because this is where the cookie happens.
No, doesn't he buy the cookie? He buys the cookie when he buys the shoes. I think this is just...
No, this is afterwards because he tries to return the cookie, or he tries to return the shoes, buys the cookie, writes the note, and then we get to the quilt.
Right.
So you got ahead of yourself there. Way to spoil the story. Yeah. I was like, we were talking about it.
Even write cookies.
I did.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know why I didn't notice that. My bad, everyone. I completely apologize for getting off track on the story. So for those of you who are now reaching this moment in the podcast, you probably already heard this part. So feel free to fast forward past it or just listen to us rant again.
So free samples, blah blah blah. That's how they get you. And he buys the cookie. So then he goes home with the cookie and he's like, well, I don't want anybody else to eat this. So he writes a note that's like Homer or property of Homer Simpson. And I should have written down what he wrote in the note, but it was basically don't touch this cookie. And
he wrote hands off.
Okay.
At the very end of the note, he wrote hands off.
Yeah. So
after he tries to physically putting the cookie in the cookie jar, which it doesn't fit. But to be fair, he left it visible to Santa's little helper, who literally walks in right. So Homer walks out, Santa's little helper walks in.
Yeah.
And so the funny thing about it is Santa's little helper, instead of eating the cookie, apparently in the kitchen, decides to take the cookie up to Lisa's room.
Yeah. So how did nobody see him with the cookie?
Yes. Like, and then not only that, but they would have had to walk into Lisa's room.
Yeah.
And so I guess I don't know exactly where in the house everyone was, but Lisa was like, oh, come up to Lisa's room to see what Lisa did while she was sick.
Yep.
And so Lisa, during that time, Lisa shows Marge her sewing finger, how she could do everything. And then
this is where music from E.T. the extraterrestrial plays. And when Lisa and Marge touch fingers, that is in reference to the final scene of E.T., where E.T. and Elliot touch fingers.
Yes.
That's what you do with an alien who's going to leave. You touch their finger.
Their glowing finger.
Yeah.
And so now Homer, Lisa, and Marge all go upstairs, and we see Santa's little helper ravaging the quilt. And because I have a dog that likes to destroy his toys, not necessarily our stuff sometimes, but it takes a long time. I feel like our dog takes forever destroying anything. And so I feel like Santa's little helper wouldn't have just been able to go over there and completely destroy a quilt.
Yeah. My other question... Well, no, not so. To answer your question about how maybe he got up there with nobody seeing him, it's possible that Lisa and Marge went downstairs, and obviously there's, multiple ways to get to the stairs in their house. So maybe Marge and Lisa went downstairs to get Homer, and Santa's little helper snuck up the stairs and into the room, and then maybe like Lisa and Marge were trying to convince Homer to see the quilt, and Homer didn't really want to, but then he caved in. And then that's when they saw Santa's little helper wrecking everything.
Yeah. So I guess I don't know how much time was in between all that, but I feel like he still wouldn't have been able to destroy
probably not
completely. But then Homer tries to comfort Marge about the quilt, saying, it's not the end of the world. It's just a quilt.
And then he sees the note. Then he sees the note from the cookie, and he's like, God damn it.
Yeah.
He freaks out about the cookie.
Like it's like the end of the world that cookie is gone.
Yeah.
And so now they're like, okay, everyone, family meeting.
We've never
And they
had
go
a family
downstairs and have
meeting
a
before.
yeah. Well, we've
We've
never
never
had a
had a
family
public.
member that we don't want to give away before.
Yeah. Well, no, that they couldn't give away optionally. Like, so basically
Yeah.
saying, if Lisa, Maggie, or Bart do anything bad, they just can't give them away. Where with Santa's Little Helper, they could still give them away.
Yep. And so Marge agrees with Homer on the topic, which is probably the first time Marge has agreed to anything Homer's crazy
Yeah.
ideas have thought up of.
Well, you don't
Maybe.
really want to keep a bad dog around.
Well,
Granted, it's
no.
their problem that he's not trained correctly.
Yes, and it seems like Lisa and Bart, I mean, they love their dog. I mean, Homer was the one that brought him home. I mean, he had him in his
Yeah.
arms. He looked at into the Santa's Little Helper's eyes like, "Oh, okay, come home with us." And I mean, it was a great moment, like introducing Santa's Little Helper to the family. Everyone
Yeah.
enjoyed it, and that was really how the dog stuck. But they kind of you never see really any training. You never see Santa's Little Helper in any form of, togetherness with the family. He just seems to be running around the house, kind of like Maggie, just
Yeah.
running around the house rampant.
Yeah. So after Bart is like, all right, if he passes obedience school, we get to keep him. And Marge and Homer begrudgingly agree to it. And we go back to the obedience school, and there's different categories for each, for all the dogs named after famous dogs. We have Rin Tin Tin, we have Benji, we have Toto, and then we have the one that Santa's Little Helper is in, Cujo. Because Cujo. Now to be fair,
I don't.
now to be
I
fair to
wouldn't call him a
Cujo,
Cujo.
Cujo had rabies.
Yes.
He wasn't necessarily a bad dog, and then he got the rabies, and then he turned into, a bad dog who wanted to kill everybody because mystical rabies. It's been a while since I've read Cujo.
Yeah. But yeah, so I wouldn't necessarily call Santa's Little Helper a Cujo, but yeah, so Bart, the dog still can't follow command because he goes after the beef Wellington. They're like, how can your dog just sit there and stay while this beef Wellington sits on the floor? And then Bart's like, come on, stay, and he's being dragged over to the beef Wellington, and he just eats it.
Yeah, I do like the fact. So I believe it's after this we go back to The Simpsons, and Marge and Homer are typing out an ad for Santa's Little Helper because Homer's like, he'll never pass obedience school, and he's like, he tells Marge, and he says, "I love you" on command.
Yep.
And so then we go to another scene where Homer's on the phone with somebody to give him away, and he goes, "I love you" as a dog. Like, who really buys that?
Well, the moron on the other end of the phone, apparently.
Yeah.
And so Bart goes and pleads with Winthrop to pass his dog since she gets paid either way.
Yep.
And then forces Bart to use the choke chain, which, man, he just does. He's like, does not want to do it. He actually ends up using it. And he's like, "I'm sorry, boy. I really didn't want to have to use this."
Yeah, I get it.
So
I
gets
get it,
kind of
man.
sad.
You don't want to hurt the ones you love physically, anyways. I mean, you don't want to do it verbally.
Yep. And so we head back, and Lisa starts making a new quilt on her own. I mean, it's kind of nice on her own. And her first patch is about the destruction of the old quilt.
They had the stock market crash on there. It's only fitting. It fits with the quilt.
Yep. And so Bart's in the backyard with Santa's Little Helper. Lisa comes out, kind of gives him a pep talk, and then Bart just starts playing with Santa's Little Helper, tugging with the sock and throwing a ball around.
I like the one part where Bart throws in the frisbee, and instead of catching it, it just hits Santa's Little Helper in the face.
Yeah, he's not very good with frisbees. But one thing that this really, really takes is Bart, is like, "I wish you could just sit," and he sits and he says, "Speak, roll over," and Santa's Little Helper knows all the commands. What this really just says is all it takes is a little love and playtime with your animal for him to basically respect you.
Oh, and yeah. It's an emotional connection. I mean,
and that's kind of the one thing that, yeah.
I mean, Bob
well, that's the one thing we're dealing with at home. Well, he does, but here's the thing. Ever since we had our kid, it's less time with Bob, which used to be more.
Yeah.
And and he's gotten a lot more unruly. Like, he grabs Elliot's toys, he grabs things that doesn't belong to him. He just does it because he wants attention.
Yeah.
That's what he's doing. And
Well,
so
to
this
be
scene
fair,
really hits
you're
home.
even before you had Elliot, like when I would come to visit, we would play, watch TV or play video games. He would growl at us. He always wanted attention, but it's probably more so now because you have a kid and he's not getting the same amount of attention.
Yep. And so I'll tell you, just by playing with them, like taking that time, playing with your dog, they'll end up respecting you more. Their demeanor will change. So Bart brings Santa's little helper back to the college, and he does all the commands for her. She's
Yeah.
aghast. She's like, what did she say? She's like, "You son of a bitch, good show."
At graduation of obedience. And to be fair, she didn't really swear. Bitch is the pronoun, or not pronoun, is the proper way to call a female dog something.
Is Santa's little helper a female dog?
No, he's a son of a female dog. Clearly,
Oh, right.
son of a bitch.
There you go.
Technically, she is
So,
correct.
hey. Yep. So after graduating, the dogs throw their choke collars into the air, like people graduate, throw their caps. And
Yep.
I like how the dogs think they're going to end up getting rid of them. No, they're all going to get them right back.
So after that, we get the title cards a la the Animal House. If anybody's watched Animal House, which it's been a really long time, but they've done this in like Futurama. I believe South Park is probably it's
a
been
pop
done.
culture. It's a pop culture thing.
So we get Buddy, who ran away from home, Lao Tzu, who I believe was Martin's dog, and
Yep,
Lao
that's
Tzu.
correct.
And Lao Tzu is a Chinese philosopher, which would make sense for Martin. Ate poisonous toad, now in coma, and finally,
and that's probably why we barely see. We'll have to see if Martin's dog does come back again, because that's Millhouse with the tiny little
he's got the
thing.
Yeah, and then
we'll see if Martin's dog ever comes out of that coma.
And then we get Santa's little helper, bit Bart. Homer didn't mind because, as we all know, Homer doesn't really like Bart.
Well, he loves Bart. Doesn't like what Bart's do.
Yeah,
but he loves Bart. Remember, he was always like, and Lisa, blah blah blah, and Bart. We love Bart.
So my final thoughts on this episode: I liked parts of it. I wasn't a fan of the discombobulation of this episode. I felt like it hopped around a little bit too much. I did like the overall message of, you got to train your dog. Dogs are part of the family. I absolutely hated the scene where Santa's little helper got Homer's assassin sneakers. There was funny bits with Homer thinking Ned was the boss, Homer buying the cookie. It had some emotional moments. I mean, you kind of have to do it with the dog episode because dog is man's best friend. But overall, I'm going to go with a 3. Don't have a cow. It's not their best effort. It's not their worst. It's just too discombobulated, and it would have been a 4 if it wasn't for that stupid sneaker in the closet scene.
I didn't necessarily care. I mean, I didn't care about the sneaker scene. It is what it is. But I'm going to go with a 4 from Sprinkles because it's just funny the way that Bart acts around the dog. And it's amazing the connection that Bart and the dog actually have. You do learn in much later episodes that the connection that those two characters actually have is really huge. And I think it does kind of stem from this episode and the amount of time that they spend together. And obviously the title of the episode is Bart's Dog Gets an F, which, it is a family dog, but
it really is.
Until you really see this episode for what it is, you realize that this is Bart's dog. Bart takes care of it. Bart, I would assume walks it or at least lets it out, feeds it, plays with it. The side story of Homer and the Assassins is just hilarious. I mean, I remember it to remember this episode just in general. Assassins is the thing that sticks out. You talk about Bart's dog and Obedience School, but the thing that sticks out about this episode really is the Assassins,
which is probably not a good thing though, because the whole central theme of this episode is Bart's dog.
No. I know that, but it's one of those pieces in the episode that really does stick out, which is just really funny because who doesn't like Homer getting into a fight with Ned Flanders?
I mean, I
Not necessarily into a fight, but getting jealous of something Ned Flanders
has.
has. And so there is one other thing I did want to mention about this episode, which is really funny, and this is probably a new record for Homer. So this episode featured 6 does.
Oh wow.
So the doe count for this episode was 6. 5
Okay.
of them came from Homer, and 1 came from Bart.
Yep.
So we'll keep some tabs, but I don't think there's any other episode in Simpsons history, I would have to say, that feature more does than this episode.
I'm gonna challenge you on that and say you're wrong.
All right. Well, we're gonna keep an eye on the doe count going forward. If we figure out an episode that has more than 6, then we'll announce it on air.
Yep.
If anyone out there knows of an episode that has more than 6, let us know, and we'll when we get to that episode, we will monitor it.
Yeah. Yes, we will.
All right. So how about our character profile this week?
Who do we got?
We got the one, the only Emily Winthrop, voiced by Tracy Ullman.
Nice.
She is the owner operator of Emily Winthrop's Canine College. Her nationality is British.
Yep.
Her experience is training dogs since at least 1954 when she graduated Lord Smiley. Now, I Googled Lord Smiley, and the only thing close to relevant that I could get to that name was a British Navy officer who served on some ship between 1951 and 1954. There was no dog Lord Smiley. There was nothing I guess okay, so technically there was one Lord Smiley dog, and that was from 1990. So maybe it was like 1990, 91, who was the very first blind service dog.
Oh.
So it could have been in reference to that. I was kind of focused on the 1954 part, not necessarily the name, but I did Lord Smiley plus dog, and I got that dog, the service dog that was blind.
Gotcha. So I don't know, to backtrack a little bit, and this has to do with Emily Winthrop. I don't know if it got deleted or I never wrote it down. But in the scene where Bart pleads with her to pass Santa's Little Helper, she says heavens to Murgatroyd, and that was popularized by Snagglepuss. Or not Huckleberry Hound, sorry. Yeah.
Cool.
So just a little tidbit.
She has some reference in there for her. So commands believes choke and chain are the most important words in life.
Yeah.
I guess if she lives with dogs. I mean, I feel like choke chain nowadays is not used as much with the way society has kind of gone. Like, I don't feel like a lot of dog owners are using them anymore. But speciality, humiliating owners of bad dogs. Which, when Santa's Little Helper peed on the floor and Bart had to wash it up and everyone stood around watching, it's pretty bad. And then her favorite magazine is Jocko, Joco, which stands for Journal of Canine Obedience.
Makes sense. She's an obedience owner.
And lastly, her kudos rewards dogs and people equally for a job well done.
I mean, even people need positive reinforcement.
Yes. Well, Bart rolled over and Santa's Little Helper couldn't, so she gave him a toffee.
Yeah. So where can people find our podcast?
Well, you can find us on Facebook, on our page, The Simpsons Podcast, or The Simpsons Did It Podcast, on Instagram, The Simpsons Did It Pod, on Twitter, Simpsons Did It PC. You can listen to our podcast on every major podcast network. You can listen to us on YouTube. And one thing we also want to give a shout out, like every episode, to our the fine folks at Yellow 51. They did our logo for our podcast, our Facebook page, our logo on there. They did a phenomenal job,
Fantastic.
and they are always willing to draw you in whatever Simpsons light you want to see yourself in. So go check them out. I'm just getting the website here, 51 Yellow. So it's 5151yellows.club is their website. So go check them out on there. And currently, they are doing a 70% off sale, probably for the holidays.
Yep.
So you just go over there and you choose the number of people you want in the photo. You choose the type of picture. You can choose one of their default backgrounds. You can do a custom one, so you can describe where you want your picture to be. Basically, upload the file of your families. You leave your name, your email address, any comments, and boom, in about 2 weeks, they're going to send you a digital copy of your picture, which you can print, frame, throw on your website, do whatever you want, and you will be as yellow as the Simpsons.
Yeah, they do a phenomenal job. Be sure to check out their website and give their services a try.
Perfect. So until next time, I'm Steven Skolansky.
I'm your co-host, Robert Skolansky.
And this has been The Simpsons Did It.
Shh.